The first indication that the archive was impossible was the date. Inquisitor Severian Vhal stared at the glowing numerals suspended above the ancient data slab and felt something colder than fear settle behind his ribs. He had seen dates that should not exist before. Every Inquisitor eventually did. Dates erased from official chronologies. Dates rewritten by administratum decree. Dates belonging to wars that had been removed from history because their names alone could inspire rebellion. Dates from the age of apostasy that contradicted ecclesiarchal scripture. Dates from the Great Crusade, preserved in machines so old that their memories had become indistinguishable from dreams. This was different. The record identified itself as an authorized transmission of the Imperial Palace. It bore sigils belonging to the Custodes. It carried a cipher that Vhal's savants insisted had once been restricted to the inner sanctums surrounding the Golden Throne. And its timestamp began 311 years after the recorded death of the Emperor of Mankind. Vhal read the date again, then again. His interrogator, Lyra Ven, stood motionless beside him, beneath the low ceiling of the excavation chamber. "You are certain?" she asked. Vhal did not look away from the projection. "I asked that question 7 times. Behind them, Magos Logistor Helican made a quiet, mechanical sound that might once have been a sigh. 8, the tech priest corrected. "You asked 8 times. Vhal finally turned. The chamber around them had been cut into stone that had not seen open air in tens of thousands of years. Above them lay Terra, not the shining towers of the Imperial Palace, not the pilgrim continents, not the cathedrals that rose like mountain ranges beneath the poisoned sky. They were far below all of that, below the ferrocrete foundations of forgotten ministries, below buried cities, below sealed transit arteries from the unification wars, below strata containing the compressed bones of civilizations that had risen and vanished before the Imperium had existed. Even the Custodes, Vhal suspected, did not possess complete maps of these depths. That thought had once seemed impossible to him. 3 days beneath Terra had taught him otherwise. The chamber had been discovered because an administratum foundation column collapsed during reinforcement works in the petitioner's district. 12,000 laborers died when 6 levels of HAB blocks sank into a forgotten void. The official investigation called it geological subsidence. The Ordo Hereticus received a different report. Workers searching the cavity had discovered a door. Not a hatch, not a bunker entrance. A door. Black metal, 7 meters high, bearing the Imperial Aquila. Except the eagle had no heads. Where the 2 heads should have been, there were smooth circles. No symbol in the current Imperium matched it. Vhal had arrived 48 hours later. He had ordered every surviving worker mind-scrubbed. Then, he had entered the vault. Now, 3 days after that, he wished he had never found it. "Replay the authentication sequence," Vhal said. Helican's optical lenses brightened. The data slab was not truly a slab. It was a crystalline cylinder half buried within a machine altar, composed of materials even the Magos could not identify. Helican extended a cable from his wrist. He connected. The chamber darkened. A woman's voice spoke. "Archive Protocol Helio 7. The low Gothic pronunciation was archaic but perfectly comprehensible. "Authority confirmation required." Helican transmitted the cipher they had extracted from the outer vault. "Authority confirmed. Legio Custodes internal command seal. Access tier, penitent." Lyra glanced toward Vhal. They had discussed that word before. No one knew what it meant. The voice continued. Record recovered from Palace Command Repository 3 after the second silence. A pause. Date: 812. Post-mortem Imperator. Lyra whispered a curse. Vhal did not rebuke her. The projection changed. A figure appeared. Human, male, tall. He wore golden armor, not ornamental ceremonial plate. This was war-worn Oramite, covered in cuts and black scoring. A custodian. His helmet rested beneath one arm. His face was scarred. Long white hair hung around eyes that looked almost dead from exhaustion. Behind him, the Imperial Palace burned. Vhal's breath stopped. He had seen picked captures of the Siege of Terra, reconstructed from fragments and devotional paintings. He had seen simulations commissioned by the Inquisition. This looked like none of them. The sky behind the custodian was almost black. Great towers had collapsed. Something enormous burned beyond the walls. The custodian looked directly into the recording lens. "My name is Shield Captain Kalen Theron." Helican froze the image. Vhal said, "Search." The Magos accessed every historical index they carried. Seconds passed. "No record," Helican said. Again. "No record exists within authorized repositories. Forbidden repositories. I have searched those available to your seal." Vhal stared at the man. A custodian who did not exist. A palace that appeared destroyed. A date centuries after the Emperor's alleged death. Vhal said, "Continue." The recording moved. "My name is Shield Captain Kalen Theron," the figure repeated. "I am commander of the 79th Companions and temporary warden of the throne." Lyra stiffened. Vhal heard her inhale. Temporary warden of the throne. That title alone could condemn worlds. Theron continued. "If this record has been recovered, then either Terra survived or someone has inherited its ruins." A distant explosion shook the chamber behind him. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling. The custodian barely reacted. "We were wrong." The image flickered. Static consumed several seconds. Then his face returned. "We were wrong about the throne. We were wrong about the Astronomican. We were wrong about death." Vhal felt his mouth go dry. The custodian leaned closer to the recording device. "The Emperor did not die when we believed he would." Another pause. "He died 812 years ago." The recording ended. Silence filled the buried chamber. For several heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Lyra said, "Destroy it." Vhal looked at her. "Now," she said. "Destroy the machine. Collapse the vault. Execute us if necessary." Helican's servo arms twitched. "That would be an inefficient method of data containment." Lyra rounded on him. "If that record is authentic, efficiency ceased to matter approximately 800 years after the end of reality." Vhal said nothing. He was thinking of the oldest question in the Imperium. The question nobody was permitted to ask. Was the Emperor alive? Officially, yes. The immortal Emperor sat upon the golden throne. His divine will guided humanity. His light burned through the warp. He protected mankind against the darkness. Every child knew it. Every priest preached it. Every guardsman died beneath banners proclaiming it. Inquisitors were allowed slightly more complicated answers. The golden throne sustained what remained of the Emperor's physical form. His psychic presence endured. The Astronomican continued. The Emperor's tarot still yielded guidance. Astropaths still dreamed of a golden figure. Miracles occurred. Whether this constituted biological life, psychic existence, divinity, undeath, or something beyond all available categories, was not a question even the Inquisition could answer. But the recording had not said the Emperor had been dead since the heresy. It said he had died 812 years before the recording was made, which meant he had survived until then, and something had happened afterward. "Show me the next file," Vhal said. Lyra looked at him. "There are more," Helican answered. 947 accessible objects, approximately 11,000 encrypted fragments. Lyra shut her eyes. Vhal almost smiled. It was not amusement. It was the mind's final defense against enormity. "Play the next one." The second record was not a message. It was a list. Names filled the projection. Custodians, Sisters of Silence, Mechanicus Adepts, Administratum officials, several High Lords. Vhal recognized none of them. Then a title appeared. Throne Failure Event. Below it, Casualties, First Hour, 6,871,221. Casualties, First Day, 91,003,882. Astronomican status, extinction confirmed, webway barrier, status critical, palace command, status fragmented, imperator, status deceased. Lyra whispered, "No." Helican's mechadendrites became utterly still. Vhal read the final line. Death confirmation. Verified by Captain General Valentian R.O. Search that name. No result. Of course. Vhal stepped closer to the projection. Next. The third record contained audio only. Screaming. Vhal almost ordered it stopped. Then he recognized what lay beneath the screams. A chant. Thousands of voices, perhaps millions. They repeated one sentence. The throne is empty. The throne is empty. The throne is empty. Gunfire followed. Then the screams ended. A male voice spoke rapidly. Companion units have sealed the Eternity Gate. Ecclesiarchal forces are refusing command protocols. Cardinal forces claim reports of his death are demonic deception. 3 Ministorum armies are advancing toward the inner palace. The Senatorum has split. Mars has requested physical confirmation. The Fabricator General threatens withdrawal of reactor maintenance until access is granted. Another voice responded, "Never." Then Terra dies. Terra is already dying. Static. Then a whisper. "We must decide who becomes the Emperor." The recording cut. Lyra looked at Vhal. Neither spoke. Helican rotated his skull slowly. Probability of fabrication has declined. "To what?" Vhal asked. 31%. Still generous. I am programmed for intellectual humility. Vhal stared into the darkness beyond the projection. The thought came quietly. Who becomes the Emperor? Not who succeeds him, not who rules, who becomes him. Play the fourth. The fourth recording finally broke Vhal's sense of reality. It showed the Golden Throne. Not the throne as depicted in cathedral mosaics. Not the mountain of Gothic machinery worshipped by pilgrims. This was seen from behind. From an angle no devotional image had ever shown. Thousands of cables entered the machine. Great banks of systems surrounded it. Custodians stood in ranks. Sisters of Silence lined the chamber. Tech priests moved like insects beneath colossal conduits. And upon the throne sat a corpse, the Emperor. Vhal had never seen his face. No living Inquisitor had. He knew representations were symbolic. This image carried no halo, no blinding radiance. There was simply a human shape beneath cables and machinery. A skeletal body. Charred skin stretched over bone. Empty sockets, a mouth locked open. Vhal sank to one knee before he realized what he was doing. Lyra followed. Even Helican lowered himself. The recording's narrator spoke calmly. Hour 26 following confirmed cessation. The camera moved closer. No measurable cardiac activity. A Mechanicus adept appeared beside the throne. No neural activity detectable through biological instrumentation. The image shifted. Psychic output, 0. Vhal's stomach turned. 0. The narrator continued. Astronomican remains extinguished. The view panned to a great circular opening behind the throne. It was sealed by a field of golden light. Except the light was fading. Webway barrier decay is accelerating. Figures moved desperately around consoles. The estimated time until containment failure is 79 hours. Lyra whispered. Demons. Helican answered softly. Potentially. Vhal knew the old legends. Some were known only to the highest ranks of the Inquisition. The Golden Throne did more than sustain the Emperor. It held a gateway beneath the Imperial Palace, a damaged human webway project. Magnus had broken the Emperor's wards during the heresy. The Master of Mankind had been forced to remain upon the throne to prevent the warp from flooding through. If the Emperor died, the door would open. Terra would become another Eye of Terror. Perhaps worse. The recording continued. The Mechanicus adept turned toward someone outside frame. We cannot repair it, a custodian asked. Can we maintain containment? No. How long? 79 hours. What happens then? The tech priest hesitated. Terra ends, the custodian replied. And the Sol system? Unknown. The segmentum? Unknown. The galaxy? The tech priest lowered his head. Unknown. The recording ended. Vhal remained kneeling. His entire life had been constructed around the belief that the Imperium was already living at the edge of extinction. Now he was watching an extinction that apparently had already occurred. Yet Terra existed. The Golden Throne still existed. The Astronomican still burned. The Emperor still sat upon his throne. Therefore the records were false, or something had happened. Continue, Vhal said. The fifth record began with a room. 7 people sat around a stone table. 3 custodians, 2 Mechanicus representatives, 1 woman wearing the insignia of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, and 1 figure whose identity made Vhal's heart accelerate. A Primarch, Guilliman, older than the statues. His face lined with exhaustion. His armor was cracked. 1 arm rested in a sling. Lyra stared. That is impossible. Vhal knew why. The timestamp placed this meeting in a future centuries beyond the present era. The Primarch should not exist in a record from such a time, unless he survived, or returned, or the date itself followed some other chronology. Guilliman spoke first. How long? A tech priest answered. 63 hours. Can Mars create another throne? No. Can the device be moved? No. Can Terra be evacuated? One of the custodians almost laughed. No. Guilliman's face hardened. How many vessels? The Astra Telepathica representative answered. Without the Astronomican, translation into the warp is already producing catastrophic losses. Navigators cannot orient themselves. Every hour we remain blind, the probability of successful escape declines. How many people can leave? Perhaps 1 billion. A custodian said, There are quadrillions on Terra. Then 1 billion is more than none. No. Guilliman turned. The custodian leaned forward. We cannot permit knowledge of the throne's failure to escape. You would trap them here. We would prevent panic from destroying what remains of the Imperium. Guilliman's voice became dangerously quiet. The Imperium is already blind. It can survive blindness, not if Terra becomes a warp rift. It has survived worse. No, Guilliman said. It has not. Silence. Then the second Mechanicus representative spoke. There is an alternative. Every face turned. The tech priest placed a small device upon the table. We have examined the Emperor's throne interface for 10,000 years. Guilliman looked disgusted. And we cannot reproduce him. Then there is no alternative. We cannot reproduce him. The tech priest's optical lenses focused on the Primarch. But we may reproduce the signal. Vhal felt cold. Guilliman said, "Explain." The Golden Throne requires a psychic anchor. The Astronomican requires a central will pattern. The webway barrier requires sufficient psychic magnitude. You are describing my father. Correct. He is dead. Correct. The tech priest folded metal hands. But Terra possesses samples. Nobody moved. Guilliman stared. Samples of what? The answer came slowly. Of the Emperor. Vhal's blood seemed to freeze. The record flickered. For several seconds, nothing could be heard. Then Guilliman said, "No." The Mechanicus adept continued. Genetic remnants, neural tissue fragments, blood preserved from the Unification era, archaeotech pattern recordings, psychic residue, throne interface memory. "No, we can construct." "No! Lord Regent!" Guilliman stood. The table cracked beneath his hand. "You will not make another one." The custodian at the head of the table finally spoke. "Then give us another answer." Guilliman looked at him. "Captain General, 63 hours. I know. Then give us another answer." The Primarch's anger faded. For the first time, Vhal saw fear on the face of a son of the Emperor. Guilliman sat. No one spoke for almost a minute. Then he whispered, "What exactly do you propose to construct?" The screen went black. Vhal stood so abruptly his coat snapped behind him. "Stop!" Helican disconnected. The chamber became silent. Lyra's face was pale. "There is our answer." "No," Vhal said. "You heard it. We heard a proposal. A proposal to build an emperor. We don't know what happened. We know enough. No, we know the opposite of enough." Vhal walked toward the ancient door. He needed distance from the machine. He needed stone between himself and the image of the dead emperor. There was none. Terra itself suddenly felt false. Every layer above him seemed constructed over a corpse. Pilgrims were praying. Priests were chanting. Ships were arriving from distant sectors. The Astronomican blazed through the warp, all as it had for 10,000 years. And beneath their feet slept a record saying that all of it had once ended. Lyra followed. Severian. She rarely used his name. He stopped. "If those records are genuine," she said, "then whatever is on the Golden Throne may not be the Emperor." Vhal turned sharply. 3 stormtroopers at the chamber entrance immediately looked away. Some statements were too dangerous even for loyal men to hear. Vhal spoke quietly. "Do not say that again. We have to consider it. I am considering it. Then say it. No. Why? Because thoughts remain thoughts until spoken. Once spoken, they become evidence." She stared at him. Vhal continued. "We proceed carefully." Carefully toward what? The truth. Lyra almost smiled. "There are graves filled with Inquisitors who said the same thing. Then I will have experienced company." They resumed the records. The 6th file had been damaged. Only fragments remained. A laboratory. A human figure suspended inside translucent fluid. It looked adult, male. Too much golden light distorted the image to make out features. Mechanicus voices discussed cellular rejection. A custodian demanded progress. Someone mentioned Subject 1. Then another phrase emerged through static. Memory integration remains unstable. More static. believes itself to be him. Then screaming, the containment cylinder shattered. The file ended. The seventh record showed a battlefield inside the Imperial Palace. Custodians fought custodians. Golden warriors killed one another beneath burning banners. Vhal had never imagined such a sight. There were no traitors among the 10,000. That belief was older and stronger than most imperial institutions. Yet the recording showed undeniable civil war. One faction bore black strips across their armor. The other painted white circles upon their breastplates. A narrator spoke. "The schism of the companions has entered its 9th hour." Bolter fire shook the corridor. The faction led by Tribune Acastian maintains that Subject 3 is a blasphemy and must be destroyed. A custodian fell. The faction commanded by Shield Captain Theron maintains that activation is humanity's only chance of survival. The camera turned. Behind blast doors stood a radiant figure. Human-shaped, large. Vhal leaned forward. The image was too distorted. He could see only light. Then the figure spoke. "Why are my sons killing each other?" Lyra covered her mouth. The voice was not thunderous. It was not divine. It sounded confused, almost frightened. A custodian knelt. "My lord." The golden figure looked around. "Where is Malcador?" No one answered. "Where is Constantine?" Silence. The figure looked at the burning corridor. "Where is Horus?" The custodian bowed his head. The figure whispered, "How long have I been gone?" The recording stopped. Vhal remained utterly motionless. Helican's mechanical voice broke the silence. "Historical reference consistency supports identity simulation derived from pre-heresy memories." Lyra stared at him. "Speak like a human. It remembers people the Emperor knew. That does not make it him." "Correct," Vhal said. "Next." The 8th record was labeled Subject 3, Cognitive Evaluation. The golden figure sat within a chamber. This time the image was clear. Vhal's knees weakened. The man looked exactly like ancient descriptions of the Emperor before his wounding. Black hair, bronzed skin, a face both ordinary and impossible to remember. Eyes that seemed darker than the void. He wore no armor, only a white robe. 3 custodians stood around him. Guilliman sat opposite. Neither spoke for a long time. Then the man said, "Robut." The Primarch's face twisted. "Do not call me that." The man looked wounded. "What should I call you?" "You are not him." "Apparently. You accept that? I have been informed. What do you believe?" The man glanced down at his hands. "I remember Ulanor." Guilliman said nothing. "I remember your arrival on Terra." Silence. "I remember the day I found you on Macraga." Guilliman's eyes hardened. "Records exist. I remember what you said when no recorder was present. You could have been given those memories." "Yes, I remember your mother." Guilliman froze. Vhal had never before seen the Primarch look vulnerable. The man continued. "Tarasha Uten disliked me." A faint smile. "She believed I had come to steal her son." Guilliman's jaw tightened. "What did she say?" The man answered. Guilliman stood immediately. The recording had muted the reply. Vhal cursed aloud. Lyra said, "Why censor it?" "Because whoever stored this wanted the evidence without the verification." Guilliman paced away. His shoulders trembled. The man remained seated. Finally, the Primarch turned. "What are you?" "I don't know." "Are you my father?" "I don't know." "Do you remember dying?" The man became still. "Yes." The chamber seemed to darken. Guilliman returned slowly to his chair. "Tell me." The man looked toward the recording device. The file distorted. Vhal almost shouted at Helican. "Recover it." Attempting, audio returned. Was no pain at the end. The man was speaking. There had been pain for so long that its absence felt like falling. Guilliman watched silently. "I felt the machine stop." The man's voice was distant. "I felt the souls around me. Psychers. Yes, thousands, then millions, then nothing." He looked at his hands again. "I expected release. Into the warp. I did not know. What happened?" The man's expression changed. For the first time, he looked afraid. Something was waiting. Vhal forgot to breathe. Guilliman leaned forward. "What?" The man looked directly at him. "Me." Static tore across the image. The file skipped. The next words were broken. "Not alone. 10,000 years. Every prayer, every death in my name. Made it larger. I could not." Then one clear sentence. "I did not become a god, Robout." The man looked terrified. "I made one." The file ended. Nobody spoke. Vhal realized that his hand had moved to the rosette hanging beneath his coat. His fingers closed around it. The symbol usually brought certainty. Now it felt like a piece of dead metal. Lyra said, "What did he mean?" Helican answered, "Potential interpretation. Collective human worship generated a warp entity associated with the conceptual identity of the Emperor." "Don't," Vhal said. The Magos stopped, but the idea had already entered the room. The Imperial Creed taught that the Emperor was a god. Millions of worlds worshipped him. Countless trillions prayed. Men and women had died invoking his name for thousands of years. In the warp, emotion had power. Belief had power. The chaos gods themselves were formed from psychic forces. What happened when humanity poured 10,000 years of faith into one image? What happened if the man on the golden throne and the god worshipped by mankind were not the same thing? Vhal suddenly understood why the archive had been buried. Not hidden, buried, below Terra, below history. The next file carried a higher encryption seal. Helican required 9 minutes to open it. The record showed Shield Captain Theron again. He looked older. Blood covered one side of his face. "The throne has been reactivated." Vhal leaned closer. Theron continued. "Subject 3 successfully interfaced 14 hours ago." Behind him, golden machinery pulsed with light. "The Astronomican reignited immediately." Vhal closed his eyes. There it was. The impossible conclusion. The beacon currently shining through the galaxy might have been restarted by something called Subject 3. Theron continued. "Webway containment restored to 78% and climbing." Someone handed him a data slate. He glanced at it. "Astropathic contact is returning throughout Segmentum Solar." A faint expression of relief crossed his face. "Humanity survives." Then his face hardened. "But we have discovered a secondary effect." The recording switched to footage of crowds. Millions filled the plazas outside the palace. They were kneeling. Every person faced the same direction. The Sanctum Imperialis. The narrator spoke. Within 27 minutes of throne activation, mass visionary events began across Terra. The image changed. A woman cried golden tears. A blind child looked toward the sky. Soldiers fell to their knees. The narration continued. Identical visions have now been reported on Luna, Mars, Titan, and aboard more than 2,000 vessels within the Sol system. Theron reappeared. "They say the Emperor has returned." His expression looked deeply troubled. "We have issued no such proclamation. A voice asked from behind the camera. "Has he?" Theron looked toward the speaker. For a long time he did not answer. Then he said, "I don't know." The file ended. The 9th record began 12 years later. Subject 3 no longer wore white robes. He wore gold. Not the Emperor's ancient armor. Something new, simpler, severe. He stood before representatives of the High Lords. Guilliman stood at his side. The recording identified him by a title. The Renewed Master of Mankind. Lyra laughed once. There was no humor in it. "You see," Vhal ignored her. The figure spoke. "The truth cannot leave this chamber," a High Lord protested. "Entire planets already claim your resurrection. They will be corrected." "How?" "By giving them the story they expect." The High Lord stared. "And what story is that?" The man looked toward the projection. "That I never died." Vhal felt something twist inside him. The man continued. "The Emperor has always sat upon the golden throne." A custodian shifted. The man glanced at him. "The Astronomican never failed." Another official spoke. "Billions witnessed the darkness. Then those billions will die." Nobody reacted. Perhaps they had expected the answer. "The civil conflict, expunged. The schism, expunged. Subject 1 and Subject 2, destroyed. And you." The man was silent. Then he said, "I was never born." Vhal understood. The lies that formed the Imperium's present might not have been created over 10,000 years. They might have been constructed in this room. The official continued. "What of the calendar?" "Reset affected records. How much?" The man looked at Guilliman. The Primarch answered, "As much as necessary." Vhal turned to Helican. "Reset." The Magos had already begun calculating. The recording dates may not correspond to current imperial dating. Meaning, the events could have occurred at an unknown point in our historical chronology. Lyra said, "Could they have happened before now?" "Yes." "How far before?" "Unknown." Vhal looked back at the projection. The renewed Emperor spoke again. "Humanity cannot know." A priest in the chamber asked, "Why?" The man's face softened. "Because they need him." He looked toward the throne chamber beyond. "They do not need me." The priest said, "What is the difference?" The man closed his eyes. "Everything." The 10th file contained no video, only text. The title was enough. Project Continuity. Objective: preserve the functional existence of the Imperium, regardless of the biological, psychic, or metaphysical condition of the original Emperor. Vhal read the words slowly. Beneath them were protocols: historical erasure, chronological adjustment, removal of witnesses, replacement of archives, ecclesiarchal narrative integration, suppression of references to the throne failure, assassination authorizations, whole planetary populations listed as unacceptable contamination risks. One entry read, "Luna Purge authorized, 74% population." Another, "Mars Data War, Mechanicus compliance, achieved after destruction of 19 primary forges." Another, "Astra Telepathica, witness termination, complete." Lyra stared. "They murdered everyone who knew." "Not everyone," Vhal said. He looked around the buried chamber. "Someone built this place." Helican said, "There is additional metadata." "Show it." A name appeared. Kalen Theron. Vhal recognized the shield captain. Beneath it, Continuity Project Archivist. Lyra said, "The custodian who supported the replacement Emperor preserved the truth." "Apparently." "Why?" Vhal said, "Keep reading." Another line appeared. Contingency Archive. Purpose: In the event that Subject 3 becomes compromised, future loyal servants of mankind must possess sufficient information to understand the origin of the continuity deception. Vhal felt his pulse increase. Compromised how? Helican opened the next file. The answer arrived immediately. Subject 3 stood before the Golden Throne. He had changed. The image timestamp suggested 68 years after his activation. His face remained physically unchanged, but something in his posture was wrong. He stared at the throne. The original corpse still sat within the machinery. Vhal had expected it to be removed. It had not been. The dead emperor remained wired into the throne. Subject 3 stood beside himself. Theron watched from several meters away. "How long have you been hearing it?" the custodian asked. Subject 3 did not turn. 31 years. Theron's face tightened. "And you did not report this?" "No." "What do you hear?" The man touched the throne. "The prayers. Human prayers. All of them." Theron stepped closer. "You are connected to the Astronomican. Not through the beacon. Then through what?" Subject 3 looked upward. "Through him." The custodian stared at the corpse. Subject 3 shook his head. "Not that." He looked toward the ceiling. "The other one." Theron remained silent. Subject 3 whispered, "It wants in." Vhal's skin crawled. Lyra said, "The warp entity." Subject 3 continued, "Every human soul that believes in the Emperor strengthens it. Every martyr, every crusade, every prayer." Theron asked, "Is it hostile?" "I don't know." "What does it want?" Subject 3 smiled faintly. "To be real." The custodian's hand moved toward his weapon. Subject 3 noticed. "You think I'm corrupted?" "I think you kept this from us for 31 years. I was trying to understand it." "Do you?" "No." Theron looked at the throne. "Can it enter through you?" Subject 3 did not answer. The custodian repeated the question. "Can it enter through you?" The man finally whispered, "I think that is why I exist." The archive chamber suddenly shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Vhal spun. His stormtroopers raised their weapons. Helican disconnected. The projection vanished. Another impact shook the vault. Lyra drew her pistol. "Seismic." Helican extended a sensor. "No." Vhal knew before the Magos finished. "Someone is coming." The Vox crackled. A stormtrooper stationed in the upper tunnel shouted, "Contact! Golden armor! Emperor preserve!" The transmission ended. Lyra looked at Vhal. Neither needed to speak the name. Custodes. The outer blast door exploded inward. Vhal had faced demons. He had faced heretic Astartes. He had survived a Genestealer patriarch at 20 meters. Nothing compared to watching a custodian enter a room with the intent to kill. The warrior came through smoke like a golden execution. 3 stormtroopers fired. Their hell guns struck Oromite. The custodian crossed the chamber before the beams faded. His guardian spear removed the first soldier's head. The return stroke cut the second in half. The third fired point blank. The custodian drove the spear through his chest. 3 men died in less than 2 seconds. "Stop!" Vhal roared. The custodian turned. His helmet lenses burned red. Vhal raised his rosette. "I am Inquisitor Severian Vhal, Ordo Hereticus, acting under authority of the holy orders of the Emperor's Inquisition." The custodian walked toward him. "Inquisitor." His voice sounded like stone, grinding beneath a mountain. "You have entered a sealed site." Vhal stood his ground. "By whose authority is it sealed?" The warrior stopped. "Mine." No custodian stands above the Inquisition in matters of heresy. The spear moved. Its blade stopped against Vhal's throat. Lyra aimed her pistol at the custodian's head. He ignored her. "Do not quote your laws to me," the custodian said. "I remember when your order had no laws." Vhal's blood became ice. He looked into the helmet lenses. "Who are you?" The custodian withdrew the spear. "Leave." "No." "Then you will die." "Perhaps." Vhal looked toward the archive machine. "But you could have destroyed the vault before we arrived." The custodian said nothing. "You knew it existed." Silence. "You allowed us to enter." Still nothing. Lyra lowered her pistol slightly. Vhal continued. "You want someone to see the records." The custodian removed his helmet. His face was old, not physically aged in the manner of mortal men, but marked by thousands of years of war. A scar crossed his forehead. His hair was white. Vhal stared. He had seen that face. "Theron." Lyra whispered the name. The custodian looked at her, then at Vhal. "That name is dead." Vhal felt the universe tilt. "No." Theron walked toward the archive machine. "I told myself this chamber would never open." Vhal followed him with his eyes. "You are Kylan Theron." "I was." "Those recordings are true." The single word struck harder than any weapon. Lyra sat down heavily on a broken piece of masonry. Helican's lenses flickered rapidly. Vhal could barely speak. "How long?" Theron rested one hand on the ancient machine. "Longer than your calendars admit." "How long?" The custodian looked at him. "Approximately 4,600 years." Vhal stared. The records were not from the future. They were from the past. 4.5 millennia ago, the Emperor had died. The Astronomican had failed. Terra had nearly fallen. Then something had been made, and history had been rewritten. Vhal whispered, "The Emperor on the throne now." Theron looked toward the ceiling. Miles above them lay the Imperial Palace. "He is there." "Which one?" Theron's expression hardened. "That is the question that has kept me alive." Vhal's mind raced. Subject 3. Has not left the Sanctum Imperialis in 41 centuries. He sits on the throne. Yes, and the original body. Also. Lyra stood. Both. Theron nodded. The meaning was almost too large to understand. Vhal said, "The public throne." "There is no public throne. There are chambers pilgrims see. There are halls cardinals see. There are sanctums the High Lords see." Theron's eyes hardened. "And then there is the throne." Vhal thought of endless imperial iconography. One emperor, one corpse, one throne, a simple image, apparently a lie. "What happened after the final recording?" Theron looked at the machine. "You have not reached the final recording." "Then show us." "No." Vhal stepped forward. "You came here to stop me from learning the truth, yet you admit everything." "I came to see what kind of man found the archive. And I have not decided whether to kill me, whether you are useful." Lyra said. "Useful for what?" Theron looked at her. "Ending the Imperium." No one moved. Vhal's hand drifted toward his weapon. Theron noticed. "If I wished you dead, Inquisitor, you would not have completed the thought." Vhal forced his hand away. "Explain." The custodian walked to the archive device. He placed his palm against a hidden panel. Something clicked deep within the machine. A new symbol appeared. A golden circle split by a black line. Helican made a startled mechanical sound. "The archive architecture is changing." Theron said, "You access the penitent layer. There are others. 3. What is this one? Confession. The chamber darkened. A new recording appeared. Subject 3 stood alone. He looked into the lens. The timestamp was more than 1,000 years after his creation. He looked exhausted. I know why the archive exists, he said. Vhal glanced at Theron. The custodian watched silently. Subject 3 continued. Kalen believes I don't know. A faint smile touched his face. He has always underestimated how difficult it is to hide anything from a man connected to the prayers of humanity. The smile vanished. I allowed him to continue. Theron's face tightened. The recording spoke. Because he is right. Vhal looked again at the custodian. Theron showed no reaction. Subject 3 continued. I am becoming something else. He raised one hand. Golden light moved beneath his skin. The entity in the warp is closer now. His eyes glowed. Or perhaps I am closer to it. He looked down. I no longer remember where my memories end and its memories begin. The image flickered. I remember battles I never fought. Images flashed behind him. Armies marching beneath banners that did not yet exist when Subject 3 had been created. I remember prayers spoken on worlds whose names I have never learned. More images. A mother begging the Emperor to save her child. A guardsman dying in mud, a navigator screaming into the warp. A sister of battle standing in flames. I feel them all. Subject 3 looked directly into the lens. And sometimes I answer. Vhal thought of miracles, saints, visions, golden light, the Legion of the Damned, the Emperor's tarot, all the phenomena no rational scholar could fully explain. Subject 3 continued. At first I believed these were manifestations of the warp entity. His expression darkened. Now I believe the distinction is collapsing, static. Then, if I become it, humanity will have its God. Long silence. But I do not know if humanity will survive the gift. The recording ended. Theron activated another. A second confession. Subject 3. Again. Centuries later. This time his body looked damaged. His skin had become pale. Cables entered his arms. I cannot leave the throne anymore. His voice was weaker. The webway breach has expanded. He smiled bitterly. History enjoys repetition. His eyes closed. I finally understand him. He opened them. The original. Vhal listened intensely. He knew. Theron's hands tightened. He knew what worship would do. Subject 3 looked into the lens. That is why he denied divinity, Lyra whispered. The imperial truth. Vhal nodded. The Emperor had once outlawed religion, even worship of himself. Imperial doctrine later taught that this had been a test or a misunderstanding, or simply suppressed the fact entirely. Subject 3 offered another answer. He was not offended by worship. The figure coughed. Blood appeared at his lips. He feared it. Vhal felt his heartbeat in his throat. He understood the warp better than any of us. The recording's voice softened. He knew that if humanity worshipped him long enough, something wearing his face would eventually be born. Silence. And he knew that gods do not serve their worshippers. The chamber's air seemed colder. Subject 3 continued. They consumed them. The recording ended. Vhal turned toward Theron. Why hasn't it? Theron looked at him. Perhaps it has. The answer disturbed Vhal more than anything in the archive. Lyra said, The Imperium exists. Theron nodded. Does it? She stared. The custodian continued. Look at mankind. His voice remained calm. 10,000 years of war. 10,000 years of sacrifice. Worlds feed human lives into machines they no longer understand. Children are born into factories and die without seeing their planet's sky. Entire populations are exterminated for doubts. Billions are thrown into wars to recover ruins that contain weapons forgotten before their ancestors evolved. His eyes moved to the inquisitorial rosette. Your own organization burns worlds to protect humanity. Vhal's jaw tightened. When necessary. Of course. Theron's expression contained no mockery. That made it worse. Everything is necessary now, Vhal said. Chaos would consume us otherwise. Perhaps. Not perhaps. I fought at the siege. The words silenced him. Theron stepped closer. I watched demons walk the walls of the palace. I saw what chaos does to men. His voice lowered. I know the enemy. Then why question the Imperium? Because I also knew the Emperor before the throne. Vhal stared. He did not build this. Theron gestured upward. He built something cruel, yes, authoritarian, ruthless. He destroyed civilizations and called it unity. Vhal almost reached for his weapon at the criticism. Theron continued. But this, his eyes were full of ancient grief. He would have burned this Imperium himself. The chamber remained silent. Vhal thought of the millions of pilgrims above. He thought of cathedral worlds, servitors, penal legions, purges, exterminatus. He had ordered one himself. The world had contained 9 billion people. A chaos cult had spread into planetary government. Vhal had calculated that evacuation was impossible. He authorized cyclonic torpedoes. For years afterward, he had dreamed of the planet burning. He had always told himself the Emperor demanded such sacrifices. Now he wondered which Emperor. What do you want from me? Vhal asked. Theron looked at the archive. The final records. Why not release them yourself? Because I am a custodian. I fail to see the limitation. My loyalty is not philosophical. Theron's expression hardened. It is built into me. Vhal understood slowly. You cannot act against him. I can question, I can hide, I can prepare. But you cannot destroy. No. Subject 3. Theron's silence was answer enough. Lyra said, You need humans. I need judgment that was not manufactured in a laboratory 10,000 years ago. Vhal almost laughed. You chose an Inquisitor for independent thought. I did not choose you. Theron looked toward the door. The archive did. Helican rotated his head. Explain. The outer door responds to psychic pattern compatibility. Vhal frowned. With what? Theron answered. The original Emperor. Nobody spoke. Vhal felt something twist in his stomach. No. The vault remained sealed for 4,000 years. No. Hundreds have passed near it. No. The collapse occurred when you arrived in the petitioner's district. Vhal stared at him. You engineered it. I did not. Then who? Theron looked toward the machine. I believe he did. Vhal glanced at the projection device. The original Emperor is dead. Yes. Then how? Theron answered softly. Death has never been as simple on Terra as the ecclesiarchy teaches. The custodian activated another layer. The final recordings opened. The first showed Subject 3 on the throne. The original corpse remained behind him, almost invisible among cables. 2 emperors, one living, one dead. Subject. 3 spoke to Theron. I can hear him, Theron's recorded voice replied. The entity. No. Subject 3 looked backward at the corpse. Him. The custodian said nothing. The original is still here. His soul? Part of it. Theron stepped into frame. Where? Subject 3 pointed downward. Under us. Vhal frowned. Lyra did the same. Subject 3 continued. When he died, he did not enter the warp. Why? He couldn't. Because of the entity. No. Subject 3's expression became troubled. Because of Terra. The recording changed. Ancient diagrams appeared. Earth. Layers beneath the Imperial Palace. Networks of psychic architecture reaching through the planet. Vhal had never seen anything like it. Subject 3 narrated. The Golden Throne was not merely constructed upon Terra. The image zoomed deeper. It was connected to something already here. Vast structures appeared beneath the planet's crust. Not human, perhaps not physical. Helican whispered, binary prayers. Subject 3 continued. The Emperor discovered it during the Unification Wars. Symbols appeared. The earliest human civilizations built shrines above fragments of it without understanding why. Images flashed. Ancient temples, stone circles, burial chambers, cities. It predates humanity. Vhal stared. Subject 3 said, perhaps it predates Earth. The diagrams converged on the palace. The Emperor built the throne where he did because the location was already psychically anchored. Theron's recorded voice asked, anchored to what? Subject 3 looked toward the lens. Reality, the word echoed. He did not merely use the throne to control the webway breach. The image changed. Golden lines wrapped around Terra. He used Terra itself as an anchor against the warp. Vhal's mind raced. Subject 3 continued. When he died, his soul attempted to enter the Imperium. A glowing shape separated from the corpse. But the planetary anchor caught part of him. The light divided. One portion vanished upward, another descended. The rest. The image changed again. A vast golden presence formed inside the warp. Joined the thing humanity had created, Lyra whispered. The god. Subject 3 nodded as though he could hear her across 4,000 years. The Emperor died and became two. Vhal stared. One fragment remained trapped beneath Terra. Subject 3 pointed downward. The other merged with the god built from worship. The image showed two lights, one beneath Earth, one in the warp. Then Subject 3 appeared between them. And I was created to connect them. The recording ended. Vhal's vision blurred. He realized he had forgotten to blink. Theron said, "There are 3 emperors." Lyra looked ill. The corpse. No. The corpse is only matter. Theron raised one finger. The fragment beneath Terra. A second. The entity in the warp. A third. And Subject 3, Vhal said, "Which one commands the Imperium?" "Yes." Vhal stared at him. Theron almost smiled. "That is the problem." The next record showed the same chamber centuries later. Subject 3 looked barely alive. "You must hide the archive," he told Theron. The custodian stood before him. "Why?" "Because I am losing. To the entity. To both." Theron stiffened. Subject 3 continued. "The fragment beneath Terra wants humanity freed from worship. The original emperor, perhaps, and the warp entity, wants more." "More what?" Subject 3 looked exhausted. "Faith!" The chamber shook around him. "War creates faith. Fear creates faith. Martyrdom creates faith." Theron understood. Vhal saw it happen on his recorded face. "The Imperium feeds it." "Yes." "Then the state of mankind is not accidental." Theron's hand moved toward his spear. Subject 3 looked at him sadly. "You cannot kill me. I can try." "No." "Why?" "Because you love him too much." The custodian froze. Subject 3 continued. "And all three of us wear his face." The recording cut. The next was labeled, "Theron Private Entry." The custodian stood where Vhal now stood, the same vault, the same walls, 4,000 years earlier. "If you are watching this," recorded Theron said, "then I failed." The living Theron looked away. His younger self continued. "I cannot determine which voice commands the Imperium." Vhal listened. "The being called Subject 3 issues orders rarely. When he does, the Custodes obey." Theron's recorded eyes hardened. "But sometimes those commands preserve lives." Images showed fleets diverted to defend human worlds. Sometimes they demand sacrifice, planets burned. I have compared psychic signatures, data scrolled. The orders are not always generated by the same source. Vhal glanced at Helican. The Magos was processing every symbol. Recorded, Theron continued. "At least 3 intelligences speak through the throne. The original fragment, the warp god, Subject 3. Sometimes they agree." A pause. "Sometimes they fight." The screen showed a custodian receiving an order and collapsing, blood pouring from his eyes. The companions call these moments the confluence. Another image. The Astronomican flared. "They believe it is divine revelation." Theron's younger face hardened. "They are wrong." The image shifted again. One intelligence seeks human survival, a golden symbol. One seeks human worship, a darker gold symbol. "And Subject 3 seeks only to prevent either from winning," Vhal whispered. "Balance." The real Theron nodded. The recording continued. "If the fragment wins, the Imperial Creed may collapse. The Astronomican may fail. The Imperium as we know it will end." Another symbol. "If the warp entity wins, mankind may become a civilization, organized entirely around feeding its god." Vhal looked upward. Theron said quietly, "You understand now." Vhal thought of the Imperium. The endless crusades, the worship, the sacrifices. Had it already happened? The recording continued. "If Subject 3 maintains balance, humanity survives." Theron's younger self looked tired. "But survival is not victory." The screen darkened. "Our species has been trapped for millennia in the moment before a decision." The recording ended. Lyra walked away from the machine. "No." Vhal watched her. She shook her head. "This isn't truth." "What is it?" "A trap." Theron looked at her. She pointed at him. "You show us records saying the Imperium is controlled by competing fragments of the Emperor, then ask us to judge whether to destroy one." "Yes. Why us?" "I told you. The archive chose Severian." "Yes." Lyra laughed bitterly. "Then perhaps the thing beneath Terra chose him." Theron said nothing. She looked at Vhal. "Perhaps this entire vault is one side trying to win." That thought struck Vhal, harder than anything else. Theron's silence confirmed he had considered it. Vhal looked at the ancient machine. If the fragment of the original Emperor wanted freedom from worship, perhaps it had opened the vault. Perhaps it wanted an Inquisitor to discover the deception. Perhaps it wanted the Imperium destroyed. Not chaos, not traitors, the Emperor himself, or one part of him. Helican interrupted. "I have identified a hidden file." Theron turned sharply. "What?" The Magos looked almost confused. "A file not registered in archive architecture." Theron walked toward him. "Show me." "I cannot." "Why?" "It is addressed." "To whom?" Helican's lenses rotated toward Vhal. "To Inquisitor Severian Vhal." Theron stared. Vhal felt nothing at first. Then fear came. Pure and absolute. That is impossible. Helican displayed the metadata. Severian Vhal, Ordo Hereticus, access upon arrival. The creation timestamp was 4,000 years old. Lyra whispered, Severian. Vhal stepped backward. No. Theron looked genuinely shaken for the first time. I have never seen that file. Open it! Lyra grabbed Vhal's arm. Don't! He looked at her. If something 4,000 years ago knew my name, we passed the point where caution helps us. He turned to Helican. Open it. The archive lights died. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Then golden light appeared, not from the machine, from beneath the floor. The stone became translucent. Vhal saw something below, miles below, perhaps deeper. A light, beating like a heart inside Terra. 1 pulse, 2, 3. Then a voice spoke directly inside his mind. Severian. He screamed. Not from pain, from memory. His childhood returned, a forgotten dream. He was 6 years old on Gathalamor. He had been ill with fever. His mother had sat beside him. He remembered dreaming of a man standing beneath a dead tree. The man had said one sentence. Not yet. Vhal had forgotten the dream. Until now. Another memory. His first day as an interrogator. He entered a shrine and saw a statue of the Emperor. For one impossible instant the statue had looked downward. Another. The extermination of Caldris. 9 billion dead. Vhal, standing on the bridge, watching the planet burn. He had heard a whisper then. Enough. He had thought it guilt. The golden light grew brighter. Theron fell to one knee. Not voluntarily. The custodian strained against some invisible force. Lyra screamed Vhal's name. He could barely hear her. The voice returned. You took too long. Vhal looked downward. What are you? The answer filled the planet. I am what remained. Images exploded through his mind. The Emperor walking ancient Terra before unity. The Emperor fighting beneath thunderclouds. The Emperor finding the buried psychic structure. The Emperor constructing the golden throne. Horus, fire, pain, 10,000 years, prayers. So many prayers. He saw humanity worshipping. Each prayer became a thread of light entering the warp. The threads gathered. They formed a face, his face, the Emperor's face. It grew, it learned, it wanted, then death. The throne stopped. The Emperor's soul tore apart. One fragment rose into the warp and was consumed by the god wearing his identity. Another fragment fell into Terra, trapped, anchored, watching, unable to speak. Then Subject 3, a bridge, a compromise, a prison. Vhal collapsed. Blood ran from his nose. The voice spoke. End it. He whispered. End what? The lie. How? Open the throne, Theron shouted. No! The golden light vanished. The custodian surged forward. He grabbed Vhal and lifted him from the floor. What did it say? Vhal struggled for breath. Theron's eyes were full of terror. What did it say? Open the throne! Theron threw him backward. Vhal struck the wall. Lyra raised her weapon. Theron ignored her. No! Vhal coughed. You heard it? No! But you know. I suspected. Open what? Theron stared at him. The final seal. Vhal slowly stood. What happens? The original fragment escapes. Into the warp. Yes. Then it joins the god. Or fights it. And Subject 3 dies. Vhal wiped blood from his mouth. The Astronomican may die with him. Terra, the webway breach may open. Humanity, Theron looked at him, could be free. A pause. Or extinct. Lyra lowered her pistol. That's the choice. Theron nodded. Vhal laughed. He could not help it. Thousands of years of human history. Quadrillions of lives. The entire Imperium. and somewhere beneath the palace, there was apparently a door that could decide whether mankind remained enslaved to its own god or vanished forever. "Why hasn't the fragment opened it itself?" Theron answered. "It cannot. Why me? I don't know." Vhal looked toward the floor. The light was gone, but he could feel something, a presence, ancient, patient, furious. "Perhaps because I'm an Inquisitor." Theron frowned. Vhal touched his rosette. "We were created to protect humanity from threats within, without, and beyond." Lyra understood. "Even from the Emperor." Vhal did not answer. Theron said, "There is one more thing you must see." He activated the archive manually. A final record appeared. Subject 3 sat upon the throne. The timestamp was recent, only 17 years earlier. Vhal stared. Theron said, "I recorded this myself." Subject 3 looked barely human now. Cables covered his body. His skin was parchment. His eyes were gold. He resembled the corpse depicted in every imperial icon. Perhaps that had been intentional. Perhaps the public image of the dead emperor was actually based on Subject 3. The figure spoke. "Kalen." Theron's recorded form approached. "My lord." "Do you still keep the archive?" Theron hesitated. "Yes." "Good." The living Theron frowned. Vhal looked at him. "You didn't expect that." "No." The recording continued. Subject 3 smiled. "I told you long ago that I knew. Why permit it? Because I am tired." Theron's recorded face showed surprise. Subject 3 continued. "I have held them apart for 4,000 years. Who? You know." His eyes brightened. "The man beneath Terra, a breath, and the god above it." The palace shook. "I am the wall between them," Theron said. "Then remain." "I cannot, forever. You are the Emperor." Subject 3 laughed softly. "No." His gaze contained infinite sadness. "I am a machine built from a dead man's memories." Theron knelt. "You saved mankind. Perhaps. You have guided us. Perhaps. You are worthy." Subject 3 looked at him. "That may be the cruelest thing anyone has ever said to me." The custodian lowered his head. Subject 3 continued. "The fragment is becoming stronger." "How?" "It has learned to influence mortals." Vhal felt cold. Dreams, instincts, coincidences. Subject 3 looked directly toward the recording lens. "Eventually it will find someone." Theron's younger voice asked. "Someone to do what?" "Make the choice." The golden eyes seemed to stare through 4,000 years directly at Severian Vhal. "Because I cannot." The file ended. Silence. Vhal knew then. This had not begun with the collapsed foundation. Not with the vault. Not with his investigation. His entire life might have been shaped toward this room. He hated the thought. "I refuse." Theron looked at him. Lyra blinked. Vhal spoke louder. "I refuse. You cannot. Watch me. The fragment chose you. I did not choose it." Theron's expression almost softened. "That may be exactly why." Vhal turned away. "I am not deciding the fate of humanity based on the wishes of a dead emperor, a manufactured emperor, or a warp god." Lyra stared at him. "What will you do?" "My job." "And what is that?" "Investigate." Theron almost laughed. Vhal looked back. "I want to see the throne." "No." "Then the conversation is finished. You cannot enter the sanctum. I can with you. I will not take you." Vhal stepped closer. "You spent 4,000 years maintaining this archive so that someone could eventually judge the truth." Theron's jaw tightened. "Here I am." "You have seen enough." "No." Vhal pointed upward. I've seen records. His voice hardened. I want to see the accused. Theron stared at him for a long time. Then he replaced his helmet. Very well. The journey upward took 6 hours. Theron led them through tunnels, no Imperial map acknowledged. Vhal left his surviving stormtroopers behind. Only Lyra and Helican accompanied him. They passed beneath sealed gates carrying symbols from the Great Crusade. They crossed chambers filled with dormant machines. They moved through corridors patrolled by custodians who did not question Theron. Eventually, the architecture changed. Stone became gold. Gold became black. The air smelled of incense and ozone. Vhal realized they had entered the Imperial Palace proper. Not the palace known to pilgrims. The hidden palace. The one beneath the mythology. They passed a hall lined with empty armor. 10,000 suits. Perhaps memorials. Perhaps something else. They entered a lift that ascended for nearly 40 minutes. When the doors opened, a Sister of Silence waited. She looked at Vhal. He immediately felt the strange emptiness of her presence. Theron exchanged hand signs with her. She studied the Inquisitor, then stepped aside. They continued. The psychic pressure grew with every corridor. Vhal's teeth hurt. Helican systems began malfunctioning. Lyra vomited once. Theron showed no reaction. Then they reached a door. No ornament, no inscriptions. Simple black metal. 2 custodians guarded it. Theron approached. One said, "He is not expected." Theron replied, "He is." The guards looked at Vhal. "By whom?" A voice spoke from behind the door. "By me." Every custodian immediately knelt. Vhal froze. The door opened. Golden light poured outward. Theron entered. Vhal followed. The throne room was smaller than he expected. That shocked him more than grandeur would have. It was vast by mortal standards, but not the continent-sized cathedral of legend. Machinery filled much of it. Cables, reactors, ancient systems. Sisters of Silence stood in alcoves. Mechanicus adepts moved among consoles. And at the center sat the golden throne. Vhal's first thought was that the archive had lied. There was only one body, a corpse, skeletal, ancient, wired into the machine. Then the corpse opened its eyes. Golden light filled them. Vhal fell to his knees. Not by choice. Every instinct in his body demanded submission. Lyra collapsed beside him. Even Helican lowered himself. Theron remained standing. The figure on the throne looked at Vhal. Inquisitor Severian Vhal. The voice was weak, human. Vhal forced himself to look up. Subject 3. Several custodians moved instantly. Guardian spears leveled. Theron raised one hand. They stopped. The corpse smiled. "Good." Vhal's heart hammered. "You know why I'm here?" "Yes." "Did you bring me?" "No." "The fragment?" "Yes." "Can you hear it now?" "Always." "And the other?" The golden eyes brightened. "Always." Vhal stood slowly. "Then tell me which one is the Emperor." Subject 3 looked almost amused. "I spent my first century asking that." "Answer." "The man beneath us has the memories and intentions of the original Emperor until the moment of his death." Vhal waited. "The entity in the warp contains pieces of his soul, mixed with 10,000 years of human belief. And you? I contain reconstructed memories, genetic material, psychic patterning, and fragments taken from both." Subject 3 leaned back. "Choose whichever answer makes theology easier." Vhal almost admired him. "Why maintain the lie?" "Because the alternative killed 90 million people in one day. That was 4,000 years ago, and humanity has become calmer since." Vhal said nothing. Subject 3 continued. If I announced tomorrow that the Emperor died, that I was created by the Mechanicus, and that mankind's prayers formed a predatory warp intelligence wearing his identity, how many worlds survive the month? Perhaps they deserve truth. Worlds do not deserve. The corpse's voice hardened. People die. Vhal thought of Keldris. 9 billion. Subject 3 continued. You Inquisitors enjoy truth because you are protected from its consequences. Vhal's expression tightened. We die for it. No, others die first. The words struck home. Lyra watched silently. Vhal asked, does the warp entity control the Imperium? Sometimes. Does the original fragment? Sometimes. And you? Sometimes. Then nobody controls it. Subject 3's smile returned. Now you understand government. Vhal almost laughed. Almost. What does the warp entity want? Worship. Why? Because worship is food, shape, and existence. Does it care whether humanity survives? Only as long as humanity continues believing. And the fragment, freedom, for mankind, from what he created. At any cost. Subject 3's eyes dimmed. He believes mankind cannot evolve while chained to the Imperium. Vhal heard the implication. He would let it collapse. Yes, billions would die. Trillions. And you stop him. I stop both. Why? Subject 3 looked toward the machinery surrounding him. Because when I was created, my first coherent memory was of Robout Guilliman asking whether I was his father. The golden gaze returned. I could not answer. A long silence, but I knew I loved him. Vhal felt something unexpected. Pity. Subject 3 continued. I knew the memories might be artificial. His voice weakened. But love does not become less real because you can explain how it was made. The chamber became very quiet. I loved humanity too. Vhal looked at the corpse-like figure. You kept it alive. Yes, like this. Subject 3 did not defend himself. That mattered. Vhal stepped closer. You know what the Imperium has become. I know every prayer. Then you know. Yes. Why allow it? Because every alternative I can see contains worse suffering. Can you truly see the future? No. Then you're guessing. Subject 3 smiled. Welcome to rulership. Vhal stared. Behind the humor was exhaustion beyond anything mortal. 4,000 years holding 2 gods apart. Or 2 fragments. Or 2 competing futures. Why me? The fragment chose you because you hate what you have become. Vhal's face hardened. You know nothing about me. I know Keldris. The word struck him like a bullet. Vhal could not breathe. Subject 3 continued. 9 billion voices disappeared at once. Lyra looked at Vhal. She had never heard him discuss it. Subject 3's eyes filled with golden tears. I felt every one. Vhal's hand shook. You ordered exterminations before. Yes. Then don't judge me. I'm not. Why mention it? Because you think about it every day. Vhal said nothing. Because part of you still wonders whether saving humanity is enough if there is nothing human left when we finish. The Inquisitor looked away. Subject 3 whispered. So does the fragment. And you? So do I. For the first time, Vhal understood why he had been chosen. Not because he was pure, because he was uncertain. Fanatics could not decide this. Saints could not. Custodians could not. Perhaps only someone who had spent his life committing atrocities for the survival of mankind could recognize the question. When did survival stop being salvation? Vhal looked at Subject 3. What happens if I open the final seal? I die. The Astronomican almost certainly extinguishes temporarily. For how long? Unknown. The webway breach opens. Can it be contained? Possibly. By whom? The fragment, if it retains sufficient power. And the warp entity. It will attempt to absorb him. If it succeeds, Subject 3's golden eyes burned brighter. Then humanity receives the god it always wanted. Vhal's stomach tightened. And if the fragment wins, the Emperor as he was may return to the warp. Alive? No. A god? Perhaps. What would he do? Subject 3 smiled sadly. He never told me. Could he destroy the Astronomican? Yes. Destroy the Imperial Creed? Yes. Destroy the Imperium? Yes. And humanity? The figure hesitated. Possibly. Vhal stared. Those are terrible options. That is why I have sat here for 4,000 years. Vhal turned toward Theron. The custodian stood perfectly still. You knew all of this. Yes. Why preserve the archive? Because eventually he will fail. Theron looked at Subject 3. The figure on the throne nodded. My systems are degrading. Helican suddenly stepped forward. Rate! Subject 3 looked at him. Significant. Projected functional duration. Between 19 and 112 years. Vhal felt the scale of the crisis change instantly. This was not philosophical. The decision was coming. Theron said, That is why the vault opened now. Vhal looked toward the throne. The fragment knows you're dying. Yes. And it wants release. Yes. What does the warp entity want? Subject 3's expression changed. Me. Why? Because I am the final barrier. Vhal looked upward, as though he could see through the palace roof, into the Imperium. Has it tried? Subject 3 laughed weakly. Constantly. As if in answer, the chamber lights flickered. Every sister of silence turned at once. Theron's spear moved into his hands. Subject 3 closed his eyes. Now. The word was barely audible. Then the warp screamed. Vhal had experienced psychic attacks before. This was different. The entire throne room seemed to bend. Golden light became red. The walls stretched impossibly high. A sound like 10 trillion people praying filled the chamber. The custodians raised weapons. The sisters formed a circle. Helican collapsed as half his systems shut down. Lyra screamed. Vhal saw a figure behind the throne. Tall, golden, perfect. The Emperor, not the corpse, not Subject 3. A radiant god wearing humanity's oldest dream. It smiled. Vhal felt love, absolute love. Every wound in his mind disappeared. Culdris vanished. His guilt vanished. Fear vanished. The figure opened its arms. My son. Vhal began walking toward it. Theron struck him. The blow threw him across the floor. Pain shattered the vision. Do not listen, the custodian roared. The golden figure changed. Its smile widened. Too wide. Behind its face, Vhal saw billions of mouths. Every mouth prayed. Every prayer screamed. Subject 3 convulsed on the throne. Cables burst. Golden lightning crossed the chamber. Theron and the other custodians formed a wall. The warp entity spoke, not in sound, in belief. I am the Emperor. One custodian fell to his knees. Another shouted denial. The figure stepped forward. I am what you made. A sister of silence ignited. Not burned, ignited. White flame consumed her. The null field weakened. The golden entity grew brighter. Subject 3 screamed. Severian! Vhal crawled toward the throne. What? The seal! A panel opened beside the machinery. Inside was a simple lever. Black. No ornament. Vhal stared. Theron saw it. No! Subject 3 shouted. He must choose! The custodian fought toward them through waves of psychic force. The warp entity smiled. "Pull it." Another voice came from beneath the floor. "Open. 2 commands. Same action. Different reasons." Vhal reached the lever. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Severian!" He looked at her. "What do we do?" For once, his interrogator had no answer. The golden god advanced. Theron fought it as though striking light could matter. His spear passed through the figure. The entity touched him. Theron screamed. 10,000 years of loyalty turned against him. He collapsed. Vhal looked at Subject 3. The corpse-like man was dying. "Tell me what to do." Subject 3 laughed through blood. "If I knew, I would have done it." Vhal looked at the lever. The choice was not between good and evil. That was the lie people told afterward. Real choices were between catastrophes. Maintain the seal and the Imperium continued. Perhaps for another century, perhaps another millennium if a replacement could be created again. War, oppression, faith, survival. Pull the lever and everything changed. The original Emperor's fragment would be released. The warp god might consume him, or he might destroy it. The Astronomican could fail. Terra could fall. Humanity could fracture. Trillions might die. But perhaps the cycle would end. Vhal thought of Caldris. 9 billion dead because he had decided their sacrifice was necessary. He had told himself one world was a fair price for mankind. Now the same logic could justify eternity. One atrocity after another. Forever. Because change was dangerous. Because freedom was dangerous. Because uncertainty was dangerous. That was how the Imperium had become what it was. Not through one betrayal. Through 10,000 years of reasonable decisions. Vhal removed his hand from the lever. Subject 3 stared. The warp entity smiled. The fragment beneath Terra went silent. Lyra whispered, "What are you doing?" Vhal looked at the throne. "I refuse their choice." Theron struggled to rise. "There is no other choice. There is always another choice." Subject 3's eyes widened slightly. Vhal turned to Helican. "Can the throne interface be severed from the Astronomican?" The Magos lay damaged on the floor. "Unknown. Can it? Possibly. Can the webway barrier be separated? Possibly." Subject 3 understood first. "No." Vhal looked at him. "You said the original throne connected multiple systems." "Yes. They were combined because the Emperor was powerful enough to operate them." "Yes." "Then separate them." Subject 3 stared. Theron said, "Impossible." Vhal rounded on him. "Everything is impossible until the Mechanicus finds an instruction manual." Helican made a weak mechanical sound. "Humor acknowledged." Vhal pointed toward the throne. "We stop asking one being to be lighthouse prison guard, ruler, and god." Subject 3's eyes burned. "You cannot replace the psychic power." "No." Vhal looked toward the warp entity. "But mankind has psychers." Subject 3 understood. Millions would die. Millions already die feeding the Astronomican. The webway seal requires more. Then find another way. Theron laughed bitterly. "You intend to solve the Golden Throne." "No." Vhal looked at him. "I intend to stop worshipping the problem." The warp entity screamed. The chamber shook. Vhal knew he had chosen correctly, simply because both voices hated the answer. The fragment beneath Terra thundered. "Open!" The warp god commanded. "Pull!" Vhal stepped away from the lever. "No!" Subject 3 laughed. It began as a whisper, then grew. For the first time in 4,000 years, the manufactured Emperor laughed. The warp entity turned toward him. Subject 3 looked at Vhal. I like you. Can you survive long enough? For what? For us to rebuild the system? Us. Vhal looked at Theron. You're recruiting. The custodian slowly stood. Subject 3 smiled. Kalen. Theron stared at Vhal, then at the throne, his spear lowered. For 10,000 years, custodians had been built for obedience. Yet somewhere inside that engineered loyalty, Theron had hidden an archive. Perhaps that was enough. Subject 3 looked toward the Sisters of Silence. Containment. They formed ranks. The psychic pressure increased. The golden entity screamed. Vhal saw its beautiful face crack. Behind it was hunger. Not evil in the human sense. Something worse. Need without limit. Subject 3 raised one skeletal hand. Not today! The warp entity surged. Golden fire consumed the throne room. Vhal felt himself lifted from the floor. Then another light appeared. Not above, below, the fragment, the original Emperor. For one impossible second, Vhal stood between two versions of humanity's master. One made by worship, one trapped by regret. They struck each other through Subject 3. The manufactured Emperor screamed. Machines exploded. Theron dragged Vhal behind a pillar. Lyra pulled Helican into cover. The entire palace trembled. Across Terra, bells began ringing. Vhal could hear them through kilometers of stone. Every bell, every cathedral, every shrine, the population believed a miracle was happening. Perhaps it was. Subject 3 remained on the throne. His body burned. He looked at Vhal through the light. Now, Vhal saw another control exposed inside the throne machinery. Not the black lever. 3 conduits, Astronomican, webway containment, throne interface. Helican saw them too. The Magos dragged himself forward. Physical separation may cause catastrophic feedback. Vhal shouted. Better ideas? No! Good! They reached the machinery. Helican extended damaged mechadendrites. Sequence required. Subject 3 screamed. Vhal looked at the 3 conduits. Beacon first. Helican cut the Astronomican feed. The universe went dark. Across the galaxy, navigators screamed. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Astronomican vanished. The warp entity shrieked. Its shape weakened. Subject 3 gasped. Again. Helican severed the throne interface. The golden god shattered, not destroyed, displaced. Its presence vanished from the chamber. The fragment beneath Terra roared. The floor split. Golden light erupted upward. Subject 3 looked at Vhal. The webway! Helican reached for the final conduit. Theron grabbed his mechadendrite. No! Vhal stared at him. The custodian looked toward the throne. If we sever containment, Terra dies. The fragment thundered beneath them. Free me, Vhal understood. The webway conduit was also the original fragment's prison. Separated and the Emperor escaped. But the breach opened. Keep it, and the fragment remained trapped. Lyra said. Severian. He looked at Subject 3. What happens if we leave it? The manufactured Emperor struggled to speak. The fragment remains. Can it control the Imperium? Without me as bridge. He coughed blood. No. And the warp entity. Separated from the throne. Can it still receive worship? Yes. Can it directly command Terra? Not easily. Vhal looked at the black lever. The original Emperor wanted release. Perhaps deserved release. 10,000 years of torment. 4,000 years trapped beneath Terra after death. Vhal felt the presence below. Anger, pain, command, open. Vhal whispered, I'm sorry. The presence stopped. For one moment he felt not a god, a man, ancient beyond measure, tired. Then the command came again. Open. Vhal stepped away. No. The palace shook. Theron stared at him. You condemn him. Vhal looked at the custodian. I save humanity. Theron's face twisted. You sound like every tyrant who ever lived. Yes. Vhal looked toward the throne. That's why nobody should get to make this decision forever. Subject 3 smiled. Good. His eyes closed. The machinery went silent. Vhal ran toward him. Stay awake. The corpse-like figure opened one eye. I am not your emperor anymore. You're still the only person who understands this machine. An inspiring epitaph. Helican reached the throne. Biological systems failing. Vhal looked at Subject 3. You said 19 years. I was optimistic. Theron approached. For the first time, the custodian looked afraid. My lord. Subject 3 turned his head. Kalen. Theron knelt. I failed you. No. You are dying. I have been dying since they made me. The figure smiled. You gave me 4,000 years. Theron bowed his head. Subject 3 looked at Vhal. The Astronomican. Vhal turned. Can we restart it independently? Helican said, potentially. How? Subject 3 whispered a series of coordinates. The Magos stored them. Those systems were abandoned during continuity construction. Why? Because they required sacrifice. Vhal almost laughed at the absurdity. More than the current system. Subject 3 looked at him. No. Vhal's smile vanished. Then why abandon them? Because the throne was easier. Of course, the Imperium had used a god because repairing infrastructure was difficult. Perhaps that was the most human part of the entire story. Subject 3 coughed. Go. Vhal did not move. What about you? I will hold the webway. For how long? Minutes. Theron stood. I remain. Subject 3 looked at him. No. My place is here. Your place was never here. Theron froze. The dying figure reached weakly toward him. You kept the truth. Theron's eyes shone. Now protect what comes after it. The custodian bowed. Subject 3 looked at Vhal one final time. Inquisitor. Yes. Do not tell them everything. Vhal frowned. You maintained the lie for 4,000 years, and now you're advising censorship. Subject 3 smiled. Truth is medicine. His eyes dimmed. Dosage matters. Then the manufactured emperor of mankind closed his eyes. The golden throne began to die. Vhal, Lyra, Helican, and Theron ran. Behind them, Subject 3 remained connected to the webway containment system. The Astronomican was dark. Across the galaxy, ships were already lost. But the backup system existed, hidden beneath the northern palace complexes. Helican guided them. They reached systems that had not operated in millennia. Ancient psychic amplifiers, arrays originally designed before the throne had become the center of everything. The Mechanicus adepts guarding them refused access. Theron killed their commander. Vhal presented his rosette. Nobody argued after that. For 6 hours, Terra existed without the Astronomican. 6 hours. Enough to kill hundreds of thousands in the warp. Enough to strand fleets. Enough to trigger panic across Segmentum Solar. Then the ancient arrays activated. 10,000 sanctioned psychers screamed. The beacon returned. Weak, unsteady, but independent. For the first time since the Horus heresy, the Astronomican burned without passing through the being on the golden throne. Vhal watched its activation from a control chamber. Helican's remaining lenses glowed. Output 17% of previous intensity. Increase it. We'll kill additional psychers. Vhal looked through the observation window. Rows of human beings sat connected to machinery. They were already dying. He thought of Subject 3. Every choice had a cost. Gradually, Vhal said. Find efficiency improvements first. Helican paused. That is not traditional Imperial methodology. It is now. Theron stood near the door. His armor was damaged. Lyra sat against a console. No one spoke of what was happening beneath them. The Golden Throne still held the webway breach, but Subject 3 was dying, perhaps already dead. The fragment remained imprisoned. The warp god remained outside. For now, Terra survived. Hours later, Theron received confirmation. Subject 3 had ceased all measurable activity. Vhal waited for some cosmic sign. None came. No thunder, no miracle, no voice. Just a single line on a monitor. Throne primary, cognitive interface, offline. After 4,000 years, Subject 3 was dead. The Imperium did not know. The High Lords were informed that an Astronomican malfunction had occurred. The Ecclesiarchy proclaimed that the Emperor had tested humanity's faith. Millions celebrated the beacon's return. Pilgrims filled Terra's avenues. They sang, they prayed, and their prayers continued, feeding the thing in the warp. But the connection had changed. The god could no longer speak through the throne. The fragment beneath Terra could no longer command through Subject 3. For the first time in millennia, the throne was silent. That silence terrified everyone who knew. 3 days later, Vhal stood in a chamber with 12 people. The Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, 2 High Lords, the Fabricator General's representative, the Master of the Astronomican, 3 Sisters of Silence, Theron, Lyra, Helican, and himself. Nobody sat at the head of the table. Vhal insisted upon that. The Captain General spoke first. The Imperial population cannot learn what occurred. No, Vhal said. One High Lord looked surprised. You agree? For now. Theron studied him. Vhal continued. If we announce the Emperor's death, the existence of Subject 3, and the nature of the warp entity simultaneously, the Imperium collapses. The ecclesiarchal representative said, then the records must be destroyed. No, everyone looked at Vhal. They survive. Why? Because this cannot happen again. The official's expression darkened. Heresy cannot be archived. Vhal smiled slightly. I am the Inquisition. He placed his rosette on the table. I decide what constitutes necessary heresy. Nobody laughed. Vhal continued. The public story remains unchanged. Lyra looked at him. He had expected disappointment. Instead, she understood. Not forever. For now. The Emperor remains upon the Golden Throne, Vhal said. Technically true. The original corpse remained there. His light guides humanity. Also true, depending on what one meant by his. The Astronomican continues. True, but internally everything changes. The Fabricator General's representative shifted. Define everything. We separate the Imperium from dependence upon a single psychic entity. Silence. Vhal continued. The Astronomican becomes an independent institution. The Master of the Astronomican nodded slowly. The webway containment becomes a technical and military priority. A Sister of Silence signed agreement. We study the planetary anchor. Mechanicus optics brightened. We prepare for eventual release of the fragment beneath Terra. Theron's expression tightened. Release. Safely. If possible, nothing is impossible, apparently. Vhal looked around the table. And we reduce the psychic nourishment reaching the warp entity. The ecclesiastical representative stood. You propose ending worship of the Emperor, not tomorrow. Then when? Vhal looked toward the wall. Beyond it, billions were praying. Slowly, the priest stared in horror. Faith holds the Imperium together. It also built the thing trying to enter our reality. You believe the archive. I saw it. The priest sat. Nobody spoke for several minutes. The Captain General finally asked, "What replaces faith?" Vhal looked around the chamber. For once, there was no ready doctrine, no ancient command, no divine answer. Responsibility, one High Lord scoffed. That will not inspire armies. No. Vhal picked up his rosette. But perhaps humanity has had enough inspiration. The reforms began in secrets, tiny changes. The Administratum believed they were efficiency programs. The Mechanicus believed they were restoration initiatives. The Ecclesiarchy believed they were doctrinal adjustments. No institution saw the entire structure. Vhal intended to keep it that way. The Astronomican's independent arrays expanded. Psyker mortality declined by 11% in the first year. Helican called this statistically miraculous. Vhal banned him from using the word. The Sisters of Silence mapped the webway breach. Theron led expeditions beneath Terra to understand the planetary anchor. The Custodes officially knew nothing. Unofficially, several hundred became involved. Not all agreed. 3 attempted to kill Vhal during the first decade. Theron killed 2. Lyra killed the 3rd. She became an Inquisitor herself 17 years after the discovery. Vhal gave her the rosette personally. "You'll regret this," she told him. "I already do." The warp entity did not disappear. Miracles continued. Saints still appeared. Prayers were sometimes answered. But patterns changed. The entity became more distant, less coherent, perhaps starving, perhaps waiting. The fragment beneath Terra also remained. Vhal dreamed of it often. Sometimes it spoke, "Release me." At first, the command was angry, then frustrated, then strangely conversational. Why? Vhal once answered in a dream, "Because you failed." The golden figure beneath the dead tree stared at him. "I saved humanity. For a time, I gave it unity. You gave it an empire. Without me, chaos wins." Perhaps the Emperor's expression hardened. "You gamble with my species." Vhal laughed. "You did the same." The dream ended. He woke crying, not from fear, from the realization that the Emperor had not disagreed. 31 years after the vault opened, Vhal returned to it, older, his hair white, one eye replaced by augmetics. Theron accompanied him. The custodian looked unchanged. Lyra was now Lord Inquisitor Ven. Helican existed inside a mobile cogitator shrine after losing most of his biological components. The archive machine still worked. Vhal stood before it. "What do we do with it?" Lyra asked. "Keep it. For another Inquisitor, perhaps." Theron looked at the ancient black door. "The fragment chose you." Vhal nodded. "It may choose another. Would you trust them?" "No." Theron almost smiled. Vhal approached the machine. He added one final record. The projection lens activated. His own older face appeared. "My name is Inquisitor Severian Vhal." He paused. "If you are watching this, then you have found the Continuity Archive." He looked directly into the lens. "Everything you have seen is true." Another pause. "But truth is not instruction." He thought of Subject 3, of Caldris, of the Emperor beneath Terra, of the god waiting in the warp. The greatest mistake of the Imperium was not worship. He shook his head. Nor obedience. His scarred face hardened. It was believing that someone else could permanently carry the burden of deciding what humanity should become. He leaned closer. The original emperor tried. He failed. His worshippers created a god. It failed. We created another emperor. He failed. Vhal's voice softened. Perhaps failure is not proof that we should stop trying. He looked down for a moment. Perhaps it is proof that no one should try alone. He raised his eyes. If the throne still exists in your age, do not worship it. If the fragment beneath Terra still waits, do not blindly obey it. If the god in the warp still answers prayers, do not mistake power for goodness. And if the Imperium still exists, a faint, exhausted smile, then we clearly did not fix everything. Lyra laughed behind the recording device. Vhal continued. Protect humanity. Not the Imperium, not the throne, not history. Humanity. He reached toward the controls, then stopped. There is one final thing. His expression became serious. The Emperor was a man. Vhal imagined entire worlds burning him for that sentence. He may also have become something more. But never forget the first truth. A man can be wrong. The recording ended. Theron stood beside him in silence. After a while, the custodian asked, Do you truly believe he was wrong? Vhal looked toward the ceiling. Miles above, Terra lived. Pilgrims walked. Factories roared. Children were born. Ships departed beneath the light of the repaired Astronomican. The Imperium still called the Emperor divine. Wars still burned across the galaxy. Chaos had not vanished. Tyranids still consumed worlds. Necrons awakened beneath dead suns. Orcs gathered in impossible numbers. Humanity remained surrounded by enemies. Nothing had become easy. No, Vhal said. Theron looked surprised. Vhal smiled. I believe he was sometimes right. The custodian considered the answer. That is worse. Much worse. They left the vault. The black door closed behind them. For another century, the secret remained hidden. Then another. The Astronomican slowly became stronger. Its keepers no longer knew why ancient modifications existed beneath their sanctums. They simply knew. They worked. Psychers lived longer. Navigator houses quietly recorded that the beacon felt different. Cleaner, colder, less like a voice. The ecclesiarchy continued preaching, but small doctrines changed. Some worlds began emphasizing the emperor as protector rather than god. Others taught that service to humanity itself was a sacred act. A phrase appeared in sermons with no known origin. The emperor serves mankind. Therefore, mankind must survive the emperor. The ecclesiarchy condemned it, then adopted a modified version 2 centuries later. History was strange that way. Severian Vhal died at the age of 193. Not in battle, not facing a daemon, not assassinated by the countless organizations that had reason to hate him. He died in a chair overlooking Terra's poisoned sunset. Lyra was with him. Theron stood nearby. Helican's final cogitator core rested on a table. Vhal's breathing became shallow. He had spent his final years studying the fragment beneath Terra. They had not found a way to release it safely, but they had learned something else. The planetary anchor was weakening, slowly, perhaps centuries, perhaps millennia. Eventually the Emperor would be free, whether humanity wanted him or not. Lyra held Vhal's hand. Are you afraid? He smiled. Of death? Yes, after everything we've seen. He looked toward the Imperial Palace. Especially after everything we've seen. Theron stood closer. Vhal looked at him. "Promise me." The custodian knew. "I cannot promise what others will do." "Promise what you will do." Theron remained silent. Vhal squeezed Lyra's hand. "Humanity first." The custodian's engineered loyalty fought visibly across his face. 10,000 years of purpose. Protect the Emperor. Serve the Emperor. Obey the Emperor. Then Theron looked at the old Inquisitor, a mortal man who had once refused 3 gods. "Humanity first," the custodian said. Vhal smiled. "Good." His eyes closed. His heart stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then every light in the room flickered gold. Lyra stood. Theron froze. A voice whispered. Not from beneath Terra. Not from the warp. Not from the throne. From Severian Vhal's dead lips. "Thank you." Then the body became still. Lyra stared at Theron. "Which one said that?" The custodian looked toward the palace. "I don't know." Centuries passed. The secret survived. Barely. Fragments leaked. Heretical cults spoke of 3 emperors. The Inquisition exterminated most of them. Not because every word they said was false, because partial truth was often more dangerous than a complete lie. Theron's archive expanded. Each generation added records, failures, successes, arguments. The Imperium changed too slowly for most people to notice. But it changed. The Astronomican became fully independent. The Webway containment network received dedicated systems. The Golden Throne became less central. Then, 914 years after Vhal's death, the impossible happened. The original corpse of the Emperor collapsed. Not spiritually, physically. The ancient body disintegrated. Custodians watched in horror as bone and ash fell from the throne. Nothing else happened. The Astronomican continued. The Webway barrier held. Terra survived. For 3 days, nobody outside the inner palace knew. Then the Captain General entered the continuity chamber. Caelan Theron was still alive, older in spirit than any mortal could understand. The Captain General asked him one question. "What do we put on the throne?" Theron looked at the empty seat. For 4,000 years, humanity had needed a body there. A symbol, a corpse, proof that the Emperor endured. Theron remembered Subject 3. He remembered Severian Vhal. A man can be wrong. The Captain General waited. Theron walked toward the throne. He disconnected the final ceremonial cables. Then he ordered the chamber sealed. "Nothing." The Captain General stared. "The High Lords will be told the Emperor remains. The Custodes will guard the throne. Pilgrims will pray, and the throne itself." Theron looked at the empty golden seat. "Let it be empty." The Captain General's face hardened. "That is heresy." Theron smiled. After nearly 15,000 years of loyalty, the expression felt strange. Yes, the empty throne remained hidden. Humanity continued. No apocalypse came. The warp god still existed. The fragment beneath Terra still waited. But something changed the moment the seat became empty. Across the galaxy, psychers dreamed of a door, not opening, waiting. Some saw an old man standing before it. Others saw a young warrior. Some saw a golden king. Some saw nothing but light. Every dream contained the same question. "What will you become without me?" No answer came. For once, humanity was expected to provide its own. And deep beneath Terra, below the palace, below the ruins of forgotten civilizations, below even the foundations of the Imperium, the ancient fragment of the Emperor waited in darkness. It no longer commanded release. It listened. Above it, Billions lived, fought, loved, hated, prayed, doubted, survived. And for the first time since the Great Crusade, the future of mankind belonged slightly less to the Emperor of mankind, and slightly more to mankind itself.